All right, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, Think Sacred. I'm Zach. This is Phil, my father. And I was saying, I was telling you earlier, I think I've worked out most of the little problems that we had with the first episode when it came to, how we recorded it and the little transitions and everything like that. So I think it'll be much easier this time, and I think it'll go a little smoother as far as that's concerned. How did you like the first episode, though? Like, as far as content, you have some notes and things you want.
I do have notes, but it goes along with what I said last time. I think we like listening to ourselves, so in all seriousness, though, when you say something and you're trying to say something of substance, anytime, it could be in a corporate setting, could be in an interview, honestly, where you said, man, I should have answered it that way, right? You look back and you say, I could have said it this way, or could have explained it this way, or that's something we probably need to expand upon, you know what I mean? And so with that in mind, I did jot down a few notes, only a few, but one of them is, and let me just kind of run over a couple that are top of mind, right?
Yeah, feel free.
Doing something for God. That's something that I don't know if you want to explore it on this one, but it's something that I definitely want to explore further, right? And there's a couple other things here. So doing something for God. I gave the example also of the two identical families. I probably didn't do a very good job with the two identical families, with the exception of the dad. One of them basically said, I think God is telling me to go out there and preach and teach and do all these things, and he leaves his family to do that. That was kind of the crux of what I was trying to get across, versus the one who stayed home. The world looks at one and says, wow, this guy is a Christian. And they don't look at the other really necessarily sometimes as being the Christian who is living out his faith, and yet the mundane one may be the one that's more living out his faith than the other. So that's one thing. I'm sorry.
That's actually, that is interesting, because I don't think that came across in the first episode, that final part of you saying, how the world looks at these two. So, when we were talking about the worldview, that people have, and that's part of it. Anyways, keep going. Yeah.
No, I think, if I was to speak for the world, again, most of them are looking at the person that's outgoing, doing the things that look godly, so to speak, but they're not looking at the guy whose wife had a bad day with the kids, and the guy who said, you know what, I'll take care of the kids, or I'll clean the kitchen, or do those things, right? Which one again is more godly? That's to be determined. But the point of the matter is, there's scriptures that tell about God's will, and I'm going to be the one talking the biblical stuff, I think, in this podcast, but talk about God's will, and a lot of God's will is doing things in the mundane. It really is, and we think about this, and when I say we, I think what I'm talking about most is, there's a lot of churches on earth right now, tons of them out there, mega churches especially, who are pushing for people to do more and try harder. I talked about that in the original one, the do more, try harder gospel. We could argue that's not a gospel at all for scriptural reasons. But the thing is that what are you going to be, we think, what are we going to be remembered for? And we're going to leave a legacy, and we're going to do all of these things. And that is the path that we need to take, rather than train your child up in the way that they would go. You know what I mean? Again, the verse that I used before of, the verse I used before of a husband loving his wife as Christ loved the church, right? Those are things that God scripturally tells us to do, and yet we want to do this other stuff, right? Now there's a tangent too about doing things for God too, because I think if, we talked a little bit about atheists. I don't know if I've really truly met someone who said flat out, might have to think about it, that, hey, they are an atheist. Most people, when I really talk
Yeah,
to them, are like,
when
I
you
don't know if there's proof enough for me to believe. So,
yeah,
you know,
usually if you press an atheist hard enough, you usually find out they're actually agnostic is what they are. They're actually someone who just, says, well, I really don't know, as opposed to what real atheism means, is that there is nothing. You know what I mean? It's a completely different thing, and I think most people don't, especially people that are claiming to be atheists. I think most of them don't understand the difference, between an agnostic and an atheist.
Yeah. My point about that, though, is that there's Christians out there, pseudo Christians out there, and the world who believes in God. All those three can be doing these things for God, right? And quote unquote doing these things for God because for wrong motives, because either they heard God's voice, they thought they did, but they didn't, that contradicts what really is in Scripture.
Yeah.
Or they think that they need to earn favor with God, right?
Yeah.
And so those are the things that maybe, again, just this one or even in future ones, we can maybe explore a little further, because I think it is, again, it's something that I have really thought about in the last few years, more so than ever before, where I used to be kind of down that path. It's like, God wants me to do these glorious things. But you think about the people that think about this. Do you know any of your ancestors 200 or more years ago?
Yeah, nobody does.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, so
I mean, some people connect themselves up to like kings or something like that, but realistically, no, you don't know.
Yeah,
you don't know. You don't know anything really about.
Yeah. So
unless it's a historical thing?
Exactly. Am I going to be remembered 200 years from now? Is someone on the earth going to go, man, I've heard about that guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Slim.
I don't think so. So should I be worried?
Unless you're leading a revolution and crossing the Potomac.
Exactly.
On a boat in the middle of Christmas or winter.
Unless a Mao Zedong, slaughtering a bunch of people or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then you're remembered for those things. But other than that, this thing about doing more, try harder, and leaving a legacy and all this other stuff. It's like, heck, let's simplify this Christian living.
Well, as we were talking about in the last episode, right? So the theme was, it's like why even speak about anything really, as opposed, you've kind of taken it to that extreme side of where you're talking about, people that believe, they have to do things in order to obtain like salvation or something like that, or that's God's will or something like that. But I mean, if you pull it back and reel it back into, just like you said with the family and everything like that, just like a really like down to earth normal person who lives at home, who's not famous, who's not on a famous podcast like Joe Rogan or something like that, or not like Jordan Peterson, or we talked about Charlie Kirk. If they're not like that, and then they think they feel themselves being pulled to do something, to speak out in public or to put forth their worldview and everything like that, how do you determine, when it is appropriate, when it's not appropriate? See, because you're given some extreme, some extreme Christian examples.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But even for like the normal person at home who doesn't go to church every day, but then he maybe starts to feel like maybe there is something I should talk about. Maybe there is something I should investigate and then put forth, coming from my worldview or whatever.
Yeah, and it sounds like I'm going to contradict myself in the past, but God does command us to speak. Actually, I was reminded of that from someone else who listened to the podcast, and they're absolutely right. Why do I speak? Because God commands us to speak. But and again, it's I feel like we're taking Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Is that yeah? Anyway, to task, it was just using him as an example, as a punching bag for this exercise that we're going through, right? That's all, right? It's not. It's not so much a question whether what he's doing is right. For us, for me as an individual, it's not so much for me to question whether whether what other people are doing is of God or not. Although there is reason to do that, that's a whole different subject. When it comes to false teachers and false prophets, but when it comes to me, I have to really, and really understand, and maybe I'm too analytical is the problem, but I really have to understand, is this of God or not, right? And then if it is of God, I got to listen. If it's not of God, then, or if I'm questioning whether it's not of God, maybe, I need to investigate it a little further, right?
So it's interesting. So I have an inner monologue. That's how I think, right? Is I hear my own voice in my head when I think, right? It's, I respond back to myself, right? And so the voice is always the same. It's never anybody else's. It's never anything different. I never hear the voice of God. I never hear a voice that is, a different voice. It's always my voice, right? And so it's the same thing, whether I'm thinking a good thing or a bad thing. It's going to be the exact same thing, no matter what. No matter what I think, I'm going to hear the same voice, right? So when you determine, whether this is a good idea or a bad idea, you have to use like more than just your feeling, your gut. You're just like, you have to like logically like reason through it to like figure out, is this a good idea or is this a bad idea?
Do you overanalyze things or not? I tend to, what do they call it? Paralysis by analysis. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Where no, I mean, in the moment, I can think through things quickly and I can react. It's when I'm at home doing philosophy on my own, when I'm like actively, sitting in my chair or I'm getting ready for bed, and then I'm actively, purposely like working through, different ideas. That's when I'm doing the hard thinking. You know what I mean? Other than that, when I'm just out in public. And like a situation arises, I react pretty quickly,
Okay, I mean, and that's fair, and maybe I don't do enough thinking when I'm alone, I guess, but hey, by the way, so if you want to head down that path, it's up to you. And again, for those of you who listened to the first one, I mean, we try not to know what each other are going to say. We don't prepare at all. At least in the first one, we didn't prepare in this one at all. In fact, this guy came over and said, "Hey, we're going to do another one today." I'm like, "What are you talking about, man?" Well, I was outside. It's 115 degrees out here. No, I was kidding, but sweating and all this other stuff, and I didn't want to do it, but. I'm like, wait a second, you surprised me. No, this is good.
Well, okay. So I don't come over prepared either, even necessarily for what I'm going to ask you. I have a just a brief sprinkling of an idea of what to ask you, and it usually comes from the things that I end up either running into or discovering while I am doing my own philosophy alone. You know what I mean?
But you didn't send me anything.
No, I didn't send you anything, and I didn't write anything down, and I didn't know exactly how I was gonna get into this. But I think it fits. I think this is gonna fit, and you'll see how in the end how it fits. Okay. I think everything will come back.
All right, let me I'm just gonna throw another thing out there because we talked about the first one. This is and see if you want to grab hold of this or not, but. But the other thing is when I talked about speaking with gentleness, there's a verse out there that talks about always prepared, in season and out of season. It's in 1 Timothy and 1st or 2nd Timothy, but it talks about always be prepared, in season and out of season. It's talking about and Paul's talking to Timothy about how to speak to people. But that's the one I believe that says talking with gentleness, but then you got to ask yourself the question, and I'm not saying we have the answer, but it was just another thing I was thinking about, right? Is that when Jesus spoke to the Pharisees, he was extremely harsh. You know what I mean? And you got to ask yourself why if Paul says to Timothy, do it with gentleness. And Jesus is talking to the Pharisees and saying, you are sons of the devil. You know, you're not sons of Abraham. You are sons of the devil. So
basically, one of my favorite things to point out to other people in the Bible is where Jesus, he sits on the temple steps and he makes a whip, and then he goes inside the temple and he's actively whipping people. Now,
well, I don't know if he's whipping. He's overchanging the tables in the temple.
He made a whip.
You
gotta tell me he didn't whip anybody with the whip?
Well, I don't know. I never thought about that. I was thinking that. I mean, it talks about him,
chasing people out.
I don't know, but
the words that it uses.
But you bring up a good verse right there, because you can easily miss that he went to the temple and it was almost like a reaction, and he started throwing the tables over. Right? We could look at it that way, but if you read it and you miss that little blurb in there that basically says it, like he took time to make this thing. He was furious, but he. There's something in the Bible that says, "In your anger, do not sin." It wasn't a reactionary thing. I mean, he saw this, he took time, and he took care of it.
But interestingly enough, in like what we consider like law nowadays, right? That's a premeditated act of violence. That's what that is. It's a premeditative act of violence. And nowadays, in our culture, in our society, you get arrested and you go to jail for that. You know what I mean? It's an interesting thing to think about.
Well, eventually he did die for stuff like that.
Yeah. But no, it wasn't for stuff like that.
Okay.
But anyways, all right. So we're talking about like how to determine, like ways to think and everything. And one of the things that happens is when we're talking about the worldview and everything like that is people get these ideas. You don't get ideas usually just from a random place, right? It usually comes from another person. You usually have either an experience and somebody explains it to you, or you're learning in school and somebody explains it to you. So the question I want to pose today, I'm starting extreme on purpose, and then we can walk it back. But is society the devil? Is society evil? And is nature God?
No.
So he said no.
Okay,
right away.
On to the next subject. No.
I'm going to make my case here. Okay.
All right.
So what happens in the Bible, and this is we're talking about types and shadows. This is throughout the entire Bible. The people that are usually the prophets, the good guys, the people that are able to speak with God and everything like that. They're usually people of the wilderness. They're usually people that go out into the wilderness and they have their encounter with nature, and the devil appears to Jesus and tempts him out there, right? But it's out in nature that he learns, basically something. Like Moses. Moses goes out he's out in the desert. He has to walk through the desert and everything before he finds the bush on the mountain, and so he's out in nature, and he's not in a city, he's not in a synagogue, he's not in a temple, right? Same thing with Jesus, right? Jesus is out in the desert. Same thing with like the Israelites out in the desert when after they're freed from Egypt, right? They're crossing the desert. They have to spend 40 years out there. And it's because nature, when you're out there in that harsh environment, it wakes you up. It teaches you. Whereas when you're in society, and this is like the best example is just of today, is when you're in society, everything's easy. So you get fat and lazy. You start to like dumb down, right? Because you don't have to actively think and listen to God in order to survive. Whereas when you're out in the desert, you got to use your wits, and you got to use you have to survive. How are you going to survive if you don't have any food and you're out in the desert for 40 days? You know what I mean? It's like, it's got to take more than just, what we take for granted nowadays. I can just go down to McDonald's and I can get a burger and everything like that. So those things make you weak. And then every idea, and I'm like, to expand this even further, every idea that we have in society is like usually is like a bad thing that has come from society, like abortion, right? The idea of abortion spread through society by people like talking and telling each other about this is a possibility of a thing. But if people were living just out in the wilderness alone, taking care of just their own family or staying in their own tribe or something like that. And I'm not trying to say how you should live or anything like that. That's something completely different. But I'm just saying, when you're out in nature, abortion isn't a natural thing. Abortion is unnatural.
Are you saying okay? So are you saying that there's bad societal influences? I think is what you're coming to, right? I mean,
yeah, but it's society. This is why I said that society is the devil, because it's society that actually puts forth all these bad ideas: money, greed, sex. Like if you're out in nature and you're with your woman and everything like that, it's like Adam and Eve are basically innocent in and of themselves, right? When they're out in the garden, and it's not until they wake up and they're now, they form their little society, and the first thing that people do when they're in a society is kill each other. First thing Abel and Cain and Able do is they kill each other, right? And then only a few generations later they have war weapons, right? That's like the next thing. What one of them says, if Cain 7 times revenge or whatever, then me 70 times or whatever, and people theorize that's like the guy that first invented like weapons of war.
You talking spilling of blood, but where basically God in a sense protected him still, right? Is that what you're talking about? That piece?
He what?
God in a sense protected him still, and basically said if you spill his blood, is that what you're talking about?
Well, I interpret that a little different.
Mm-hmm.
I interpret it like as if they're explaining that if you do this thing, it'll only lead to a compounding of war, right? It's like the Hatfields and McCoys, right? Is like one person gets killed, now all of a sudden the whole family's at war. Yeah. And the whole family's at war, and then it grows and balloons out of size. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm not. This is again one of those where I'm not quite sure how to answer the question. I am. This is one, and I'm not trying to deflect here. I'm not sure if I fully understand what you're getting at. What I will say, about society is there are evils within society, absolutely, right? And you'd bring up a point. I never really thought too much about it, but where are the people when they hear from God, right? Hear more clearly, or or maybe the text where they hear from God most clearly. Maybe it is in the wilderness. I never really even thought about that. Yeah. What I will tell you, and so I do agree with one thing that I think you're getting at, is that when in society right now, I can't tell you how it was back then, but I would imagine if you're in Jerusalem and there's tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people within the city walls at the time, there's still a lot of noise that's going on and still a lot of distractions, right?
Yeah.
When you're outside and you're doing things alone, you have less distraction, and maybe there's a time where God actually pulls you out because he wants to tell you something, and he wanted those guys to listen and make and know that it was God who was speaking, right? It could be that. But the other analogy, maybe, and I'm not trying to dive into the word and make it what it isn't, because that's kind of I want to be careful of that, I guess is my point. But I will say that that sometimes for us, we call out to God in our time of need the most, right? When we're not in need is the time that I would say that we call out to God less, because we're doing things fine by ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And God sometimes wants to get our attention. He says, wait a sec, everything you have and all the sustenance you have is from me, right? Yeah. So I don't think it's society that's evil. I think that there's evils within society because of man's sin, because they listen to themselves, because they listen to things that aren't of God. they could be prompted by the devil or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I saw something recently. I can't remember where I read it. I mean, it was very recently, but it was about how Satan goes and tempts people. I mean, you read these things and you're like, okay, that's there's probably some truth there, I guess. You know what I mean? But it was talking about, Satan doesn't try to. He's not going to distract you with trying to think how they put it, but basically he's not going to distract you with trying to pull you away from church or pull you into maybe a satanic temple, I guess is what it was trying to get at.
Yeah.
But he is going to the best way for him to distract you, or the best way for him to pull Christians away. It was aimed at Christians is prop up counterfeit Christianity. You know what I mean? That's the best way. So,
well,
but I don't know. It seems kind of true, I guess. So
yeah, the best renditions of the devil are usually ones where he's only slightly twisting. You know what I mean? Where he's twisting it just enough to get the good guy to do something bad. You know what I mean? He doesn't overdo it. He's not like cranking it. You know what I mean? He's just twisting it. I recently watched The Devil's Advocate again, and that one is wild.
Wait, explain to me what that is. I've heard that before. Is it like an 80s movie?
Al Pacino is the devil, and Keanu Reeves is you find out at the end he's his son.
Oh, those are I like those actors.
Yeah, well, so Keanu Reeves is the good guy, right, in the story. They're both lawyers, right? But Al Pacino is like running a giant corporation and everything, and obviously, being the devil, he's, but nothing he ever says to Keanu Reeves is not true, but he's using the truth to just twist him slightly, and he even says it at the end. He says, "There's nothing I said to you that was not the truth." Like at one point in time, he tells him, "I told you to go take care of your wife. I told you your wife needed love. You chose not to do it. I didn't lie to you." You know what I mean?
So I think it was not D.L. Moody. I think it was one of those pastors back in the early 1900s, I believe, who actually said how we gain discernment, I think is what he was talking about. But basically it's not being able to tell the truth from a lie. It's being able to tell the truth from almost true.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And not that Jesus didn't call Satan the father of lies, but I guess from God's perspective, if it's not quite true, it's a lie, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there is you bring up a good point, because it could sound really good, but could be so far off that you don't even see it because you're not analyzing it.
Well, yeah. Well, there's another thing is you can tell an objective truth, but your intent behind telling that objective truth is to manipulate the other person. You know what I mean? Like you can intentionally tell them something. You know what I mean? In a way. Is
it like a survey where they ask you a question? You're like, wait a sec, isn't there a third option?
Yeah.
You're like, wait a sec.
Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kidding, but
But back to the thing. At one point in time, you were mentioning, we don't go to God when we're not in need, right? Because we think we're doing fine ourselves, right?
That's a generality.
Yeah,
right?
But it's a really important one to me, because I think that's the pattern of the Bible. The Bible is constantly talking about, basically, the Israelites are, they're not doing good, so they're out in the wilderness and they need help from God, and God helps them, and then they get into the promised land, they form their own country and everything, and then as time goes, as things get better for them, as their society grows, that's when they come in and get conquered. And then they have to get back to God while they're now separated, and then they have to come, and then when they come back to God, that's when they come back to the country. And then when they're at their country, and again they get lazy and they start to get away from God, and that's when they get conquered again, right? And it's a pattern that just continually happens throughout the entire Bible, and happened throughout all of history too, because after the Bible ends, right, the Romans eventually destroy and separate them, and they're scattered again, right? And so it's like it's the pattern of just society. It's the pattern of society itself, right? Is you things get good and men grow weak because everything's too good. So there's nothing, because you got to be out exercising in order to grow your muscles, right? And there's a difference between like going to a gym and working out versus being in the wilderness and surviving, and that's where you grow strong.
Have you seen the Rocky movie, the first one? No.
Yeah. Yeah, hey, it's a great movie. Yeah. No, but that's it. Yeah. That's exactly it. He's down on his luck. He's in survival mode, and since it's Eye of the Tiger. That's why that song, from Survivor, right, is the idea is when he is in the third one, when he is already the champion, he grows weak because he doesn't have the eye of the tiger, right? Because he's not in survival mode. When you're in survival mode, that's when you do your best, because that's when you're pushing yourself, because you have to survive.
There's a lot of truth. Now, I know your original question was, I think you said, is society the evil, or not society is, what'd you say? Anyway.
Yeah. Is society evil? Is society the devil? Is society the devil, yeah. And is God in the wilderness? Is that where God is? Because it seems like in the Bible, that's where people go to find God. People go into the wilderness to find God.
Well, I mean, what you're talking about, it's interesting because you're talking about a Rocky movie, and we're relating this to how God can work within us, right?
But I think it's a huge trope. Let me give you one more real quick. Let me give you another one. There's the trope of like the old man, the wizard, the wise man, right? And this is throughout like all cultures. Like the Vikings had it, the Egyptians had it. Everybody has this trope. The old crazy man that lives on top of the hill outside of the town in the wilderness, and the people from the town go to him, right, to receive healing or to receive some sort of blessing from a god or something like that.
Wisdom, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that person, that's the trope, is he does not live in the town. He lives in the wilderness. You get what I'm saying?
I do. It's interesting because if you think about that, if you think about, I mean, it's just one of those things in life that I mean, the Bible has stories like that. I agree with you, in terms of Bible having stories like that, but it's true. I mean, people down on their luck. I'm not saying that people down on their luck behave well, but those are more likely the ones that are going to call out to God, Yeah. I mean, and there's, Jesus had passion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd, is what it says somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And as people like sheep wandering without a shepherd guiding them, and he had compassion on them, right? Because at that time the true shepherd, he was the true shepherd, but the shepherds, the people that were supposed to be the shepherds at the time, the religious leaders were the people that weren't doing it at the time. But really, it's, to your point, it's absolutely, when you are down on your luck is the time to call it God. But hopefully, and this is, you're reminding me of it today, is that when I'm not down on my luck, should I be calling it to God? Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? Should I be reminded of those things that I take for granted, that are given to me, and that are just here at my disposal to be able to have and do and enjoy? Yeah, absolutely. Paul talked about this, where he said, and there's one note I actually had on there, but it was about how verses taken out of context. There is one taken so far out of context, it's not even funny. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. If you read that whole thing in context, it has to do with Paul saying, I have learned, right? So Paul he learned to do well, and he learned to be content whether he had plenty or whether he had little.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And contentment.
That's a whole nother episode, by the way, because you want to talk about like inner peace and stuff like that.
Inner peace,
That's gotta
content,
be another
and content. Exactly. Inner peace is a good way of putting it scripturally. He had peace,
Yeah.
knowing that when he had plenty, he had peace, but knowing that when he was in want is really what it says. When he was in want, he still had peace. And then it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Yeah. So he learned, but it says he learned to be. So I think God puts us in those positions so we learn to be. So we are, if we are not in those positions, we're never going to learn to be content in all circumstances. Mm-hmm. We're never going to be there by the time we die anyway, but but we are being molded here on earth.
That's the real struggle right there. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I definitely feel well. I don't want to talk about the inner peace thing right now.
Yeah, let's not.
Because honestly, mm-hmm. I swear it will be a whole episode in and of itself.
Think about this, okay? About inner peace. When we do head down that path, I do have kind of a take on where Jesus. Where Jesus talked about, the peace that he gives us. And then also he talks about my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Mm-hmm. Why in the world do Christians, more so Christians, I would say, I would have the question too, I guess. Why are Christians so burdened when Jesus says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light? Why? Yeah. So
there's also another verse that says, pick up your cross and follow me, right? Picking up your cross is not easy. That's hard.
It isn't. Okay. That in context, there's a whole different thing about that. It more or less talks about leaning to what Christ has done than it does for us to sanctify ourselves. So think about that, because I know most people think it's about us picking up the cross and sanctifying ourselves. It's more about us leaning into Jesus and his cross and what he did for us.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Right. Just a thought.
I think that's interesting. Well, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that one another day. Like I said, let me go back to. I'm going to try to make a few more arguments for why I think. What are we at? Oh, we're at 37. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back, and then we'll get back on track with society being evil and society being
okay. I want to just listen to you. I want to listen to you for 10 minutes.
I have a few more arguments for that, and
then you're going to build it up and build it up, and then ask the question at the 10-minute mark, and I'm just going to say no.
All right. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right. Okay, we're back. So I said I was going to put forth just a few more arguments for society bad, society bad, nature good. No. So one thing that society does is it provides temptation, right? It's when you're in society that temptation is available to you. It's easy to go out and get a drink. When you're in the city, when you're in the middle of the city, it's easy to go out and get a drink. It's easy to get out and go, be promiscuous. It's easier to find drugs. Whereas if you're out in the wilderness, that stuff isn't even around. So it's not even there. It's okay. So why are children innocent, right? Why is it that we believe that when a child dies below a certain age, they automatically get to, why is it that they automatically get, basically we believe they automatically go to heaven? It's because they're innocent, right?
Do you believe that?
Well,
who's we?
I said in general, like most Christians.
I think most do. I just don't want to blanket that statement.
I don't want to get too far into this, but at this point in time, I basically believe everybody gets to heaven. That's it. We can work on that. That's a whole nother episode. So let's not even touch that yet. Okay. But okay. I've started to really gravitate towards that. So, but anyways, The point is, though, we consider people.
You know what all the comments are going to be, right?
No, what?
What about Hitler?
Yeah. Oh, but I've in our private talks, I've already mentioned that.
In your what in your private talk in your head?
No, I've talked to you about that once before.
It was brief, but maybe we need.
But I specifically
we
mentioned
need to have a sidebar on that one.
Okay,
but anyway,
okay,
let's go.
Anyways, but what? So why are kids considered innocent? Right? Kids are innocent because they don't know any better, right? Because they don't know about the things that are out there that are bad for you, and it's in society that they learn about those bad things, right? So where do you learn about drugs? You learn about drugs while you're in society, because drugs are a direct product of society. Whereas if you're out in the wilderness, right, and you could talk about natural drugs or something like that people come across and find, like ayahuasca, right? The belief is that it was like gifted to them from nature, you know what I mean, to the shamans that use it. But anyways, whatever. The point is, right, is it's through society that you find, these things. And if a kid is innocent, if a kid is dropped off into the woods innocent and is left alone to his own devices, there won't be any sin, because
how do you say that, though? Why do you say there wouldn't be any sin?
So, I mean, let's give once again, so one of the examples.
What is sin? Let me ask you, what is sin?
This is a great one. This is a great question. And see, I have a lot of problems with the philosophy of that too. When I work through my own philosophy of what is sin, some people, well, the actual meaning of sin is missing the mark, right?
I've heard that before. Yeah, we can say that.
The way that most Christians think of sin, though, is they think of it's almost in the law sense. We had talked about the difference between law and gospel and everything like that. They think about it in the sense of the law. Like, there are certain rules that you have to follow, and if you break those rules, you have sinned. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So those are just two examples of I think what most people would say. Most people would have probably one of those two answers.
Okay.
So because a whole nother topic for a whole nother video is the idea of original sin.
Are you writing all this down?
Yeah, I know. Seriously, right? I'll rewatch this and I'll go through. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the idea of original sin, and me and Callahan were actually talking about this just yesterday. The idea of original sin. Are we just doomed straight out of the womb? You know what I mean? Are you just instantly doomed, right? Mm-hmm. And then the reverse argument is, and then this goes back into another thing about, do we have free will? You know what I mean? Or do we not? Are we exactly as God designed us, and everything that we do is what God intended for us to do and planned for us to do, and so therefore we're innocent? You know what I mean?
So, yeah, I mean, so you bring up really...
I just went through like three major topics that are going to be videos unto themselves, right? But hopefully to lead back to where we're talking about a kid dropped off in the woods, left to his own devices, not having any other human interaction. So imagine you are plucked off the earth and put on a different planet, and there's no other humans there. Mm-hmm. Will that person sin?
Yeah, he could easily sin. Absolutely.
What's an example of one that he could do?
In his mind. I mean, basically, sin is conceived in your mind, right? So sin, there's something, I think it's James, he says it's the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. But you could take all sin and wrap it up in that, right? So if you're out in the wilderness, right, and you are, society, I mean, maybe society exposes the sin more than it does if you're out in the wilderness. But it doesn't mean that you can't be out in the wilderness and sin. You absolutely can be. You could be profaning God. You could be doing all sorts of things out in the wilderness that basically that basically are sinful, right? And a lot of it is conceived in the mind, I would say. Now, in society, maybe it's just the fact that you're able to act it out because you're interacting with other people. If I'm dropped off in the wilderness and I see a fruit tree out there and I pick stuff from the fruit tree, basically I haven't sinned.
Okay.
I haven't sinned, but now. But in society, someone may own that fruit tree, and I pick it, and it's not mine, and now it's sin.
So yeah,
but it's not society. It's because
if you don't mind, let's actually work through this real quick, because I'm not convinced that this person alone, this child alone.
Oh, child, or I mean, you're saying a person now. Because you went down a couple different paths.
Imagine you have no knowledge of anything about modern society at all, any of the rules, anything. So let's just take like the simplest thing, the 10 Commandments. So this person, all they know is just how to live and survive. It's like an animal almost, you know what I mean? The animals we consider innocent, right? So
I mean, you're saying things that I've never heard. That
Really?
that one I've never. I mean, animals are innocent. I mean, I don't even.
all dogs
I don't
go to
even know.
heaven.
What's that?
All dogs go to heaven. It's a movie, right?
It is, but I've never heard of animals, and maybe it's out there, and I just don't know, to be honest with you. But I've never heard of animals being guilt, or being what'd you say, innocent, innocent or guilty. I've never heard either of those.
Yeah, animals and children are innocent, right? Animals and children automatically get to go to heaven. Basically, is the idea.
Okay.
I thought it was a common. It was a common.
Okay. I wasn't in the room when that was discussed. I guess.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No. Go for it.
It'll be really interesting.
I've heard about the children. I've heard that before.
Because I do watch, and this is part of it. I watch my dog, right, and my dog steals. My dog will steal from the other dog's bowl. Right. I've got when I have 2 or 4. I've had 4
heck
dogs.
Yeah. My dogs. I'll have a bowl here and a bowl here. And basically,
and
when this dog starts eating, basically it'll go to that one, bark the other dog away to the other bowl. It's like,
yeah.
Why?
And you've made it clear that, hey, this belongs to you and this belongs to you. You've tried to make it clear to them, right? But they don't know any better, right? And so even though despite their doing that, we wouldn't consider that a sin. But
they're dogs.
Because they're dogs.
Okay.
They're dogs. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, once again, so imagine Adam and Eve. They're just plopped down in the middle of just the wilderness. There's nobody else. There's no society. There's no
wilderness
buildings.
Versus the garden. I mean.
No. I'm not. No. Let's not take the exact example of Genesis, because there's a lot more going on there.
Okay.
Right. But if
I'm trying to understand where your head's at.
Yeah. If you just put a person,
maybe I'll get there.
in there. So let's just run through the 10 Commandments, right? They can't murder anybody because there's no other people, right? They can't steal from anybody because there's nobody to steal from, right? They can't worship a false god necessarily because they don't even know that if there is a false god. You know what I mean? Do they know that there's a god? Do they know they're false? My kid, if someone didn't tell my kid that there was a god, would my kid have known that there was a god? Growing up independently, like I said, separated from society in the wilderness, would my kid have figured out that there is a god? And could he have the ability to worship a false god? I don't know. I don't think so. I think so.
I definitely think so. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Absolutely. And because there's something within us that basically says, hey, we weren't just put here, right? By chance, right? We might want to dumb it down and say that as we become more educated. but simply put, kids are the ones that probably get it the most, I would say, right? They understand that they're not just put here. They understand that there is a being out there that must have created us. They intuitively, and maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that they intuitively get that, right? And so I don't see it being otherwise. I don't think that basically they're not thinking about that even at a young age. Even if They were never taught, and basically they were put in the wilderness.
But then once again, then they just know of that God. So how do they get to the point where they're worshiping a false God? How would that person in the wilderness, how would they get to that point of worshiping a false God?
Well, it goes, okay, so and if you want to go back to original sin, right?
Yeah.
And what obviously I believe in original sin. And if your original sin is to put yourself ahead of God, you're going to, by your own nature, think of yourself maybe as maybe putting yourself above God, or you're going to concoct another God because even though you know that the God exists, you don't want to worship that God. There's something, and in Romans, the first chapter, when people go into those verses, the first verse that really comes up that kind of points to why they went their own way, it's because they did not want to worship God. That's what it says. And then it says, and because of that, and this talks about the reprobate mind. Because of that, they basically they went and did things that were, I guess, unlawful. You know what I mean? Or things that basically women exchanged lust for women and men for men. You know what I mean? And it talks about that. But the premise of that whole thing is they didn't want to worship God. So I think original sin basically just puts it can easily, and it does, it puts you at the center of the universe rather than God at the center of the universe.
But once again, for a dog or for a child, they already are at the center. That's where they start. Like so for an animal, all they care about, right, is their survival, is about basically they're just doing what's innate inside of themselves, right?
Okay, and are you saying that the humans do the same, or I'm not sure what you're saying.
Yeah, how is Yeah, well, this goes back to that idea of free will, you know what I mean? Is these things that they're doing that, because I'm still just like you convinced me a little bit there. Like I think I moved a little bit closer, but I still can't see how this once again a kid left completely alone in the wilderness. Yeah, I can't see how he could get to the point of even worshiping another god if he just, like, if you aren't given that idea from somebody else.
I think
a comparison. Yeah. So what happens with in Cain and Able, right? Mm-hmm. The reason why Cain kills Abel is he directly sees a difference between himself and Abel. Abel is doing better.
In what way, though?
In the shallowest way, he what he sees that he's doing better than him. That Cain thinks he's working hard enough that he should be getting the fruits of his labor, but he looks over at Abel, and Abel's getting the fruits of his labor, and he thinks that. So it's like a jealousy thing, right? It's a comparison.
But what's the jealousy? What's the premise of the jealousy? Do you remember?
No.
Well, it had to do with them offering what they had to God.
Yeah. But that's a step further than I am. I'm still I'm back before that. Mm-hmm. You have to notice that the other person has something and that he's giving to God. You have to notice that the other person has something. So you're still comparing what you have to what the other person
you don't think it happened at the point that God said. You think it happened prior to the point that God said, "Hey, in other words, what you're giving to me, I accept, and what you're giving to me, I don't accept. I accept Abel's, but I don't accept Cain's." I can't see it coming before that. I think that's when he realized.
Yeah, that's
holy
a really
smoke.
Good question.
You know what I mean? This God accepted him and didn't accept me.
You think that it's possible? Now I'm not saying this is exactly, but you're saying that the jealousy doesn't come until that point, that the point of when they actually make the offering and the offering is either accepted or not accepted. You think that's the point where it's not beforehand. He looks and he sees that he's doing good and I'm not doing good.
What do you mean by doing good, though? I mean,
Well, he's just doing better. Whatever, the stuff that he's growing is better than mine. You know what I mean?
I don't know if it even applies that, though. I don't know if it applies that anywhere in the Bible.
Well, how else would one be accepted by God and the other one not? If one wasn't of a higher quality.
That has nothing to do with quality.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I don't see having anything to do with quality. I mean, it's like so when Jesus' parents, right? When Jesus' parents went to the temple, right, and they offered what they could. They offered the cheapest thing. What did they offer? I'm trying to think. They offered a sacrifice which was of a poor person's sacrifice, right? So that was of less. We could say that was of lesser quality, but it was still accepted by God, right? Cain and Able. I'd have to reread it, but I don't see anything in there that talks about the quality of the stuff. It just has to do with Cain. Abel offering the first fruits to God, and Cain just kind of given God, God was almost an afterthought in his giving. That was the point. And has nothing to do with tithes, because tithes, but it just has to do with, hey, I understand who God is. And Cain just said, I'm just supposed to be doing this.
Wow. That's it's a crazy good take, and I totally get it. Yeah. That's a crazy good. That I would say that's not the typical understanding then of what most people have possibly of that story.
Okay.
Yeah. That's real. It's great. It's great. No, it's a really good take. It's a great take.
Well, I have another one for you. Side note, I heard this the other day, and I need to reread this. And it's back to Jonah, right? Oh, yeah. I always thought that Jonah was spit out right in front of Nineveh.
No. And Nineveh's up in nowadays it's called Mosul, Iraq. It's where I deployed.
So you knew that. I didn't. I'm like, I would just assume that he was spit up there because of the way preachers talk about it. And then he almost immediately went and preached to them. But it was like,
yeah, no, he's still got to go all the way up the river.
Okay,
he's got to go all the way up the Tigris River.
Okay, I'm glad you understood that, because I was like, I've never heard that before, and I was like, I need to reread that because I just made that jump without reading the text. So,
anyway. I think I told you when I was deployed, I was between the Tigris and the Euphrates.
Oh, that is cool.
That's where I was at.
It's not cool, but it's. I mean,
it is. Yeah, it was neat when we heard that basically one of the things they were doing in that city was excavating the city of Nineveh.
Oh wow,
that's one of the things they were doing. There's documentaries on it. You can find them on like HBO.
If you want to watch a good YouTube channel, it's Expedition Bible.
Expedition Bible. Okay,
it's really good.
I think there might be something very similar to that on HBO, but I don't know for sure. Anyways, so okay. Oh man. Gosh, I don't know. I'm having a hard time. You've done a lot of convincing to get me closer to believing this kid can somehow sin without society. I don't know. It's really hard though. It's hard.
I do.
How are you so confident in that? Because for me, like trying to work through it, like I guess I want to believe that the kid is innocent. I want to believe the animals are innocent, right? I want to believe that the kid, because I mean, isn't that's the common saying? That's not the common saying. That's what we determined.
About kids. It's common in most churches that the kids are innocent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you look at it, and I'm not arguing for one point or the other, but I am saying we have to rethink this, because we think that kids that everyone has original sin, and then we say the kids are innocent. I mean, could we reconcile the two, or can we just say we can't? It's a total contradiction. We gotta believe one over the other.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
That's going to go back And those two arguments are going to be the same argument for whether or not we have free will or not. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be the innocent side is that we don't have free will, and the other side is going to be, there's a little bit of a difference, but it's going to be a very similar argument, you know what I mean, to be made on whether or not you have free will or whether you actually do have choice, you know what I mean?
I get why you're going there. I really do.
Yeah.
I get why you're going there, and that is one of the things that we just briefly talked about in the last video. We're going to briefly talk about it again because I'm not sure if we want to go there right now, but it is a very interesting subject. What I will say from my perspective is that the more I realize how much God is working and how little I have to do with things, and I'm not saying I'm a Calvinist at all, and I'm not saying that I don't believe in free will to a certain extent. That's not it. But the more I realize how much God has done versus me coming to God on my own free will, like you said, then I realize how much love he has for us, right?
Yeah.
Because if I have to make a choice versus God saying, I chose you before the foundations of the world, right, which he says, then you got to, then you have to say, okay, is that verse true? Or maybe I can reconcile it because he's outside of time and I'm within time and all these other things, right? And so we sometimes try to reconcile it with our human understanding. I don't know if we fully can, but I will say that the more I understand that there's words out there, there's these, these churchy words out there, and one is called justification and the other one is sanctification, right?
Yeah.
Justification is a one-time thing that we're justified by God. Sanctification is this work that God does within us over time until we die, like we're never fully sanctified. But he tries to work in, and he doesn't try. I mean, God tries to do these things, but sometimes he's not successful. No, I'm not saying that. No, that's a bad word. He works within us, and to your point earlier is that sometimes he puts us in trials and stuff like that to mold us and shape us, because only by then do we realize how much we need God, right? But he does those things, and the question is, the question that I've been trying to reconcile is, I understand God absolutely justifies, but who is it that sanctifies? I used to think it was me that needed to do these things, do these things for God. Like I said,
so
versus God works in and through us, and he's the one sanctifying us. So then the question is, how much free will do we have in that? It's hard for me to reconcile the two. It's the question of, is God sovereign or do I have free will? And maybe the answer is yes. I don't know,
Yeah. Well, actually, it is so funny that you just said that about the sanctification and the justification. Callahan literally just said that yesterday. He literally said, "You are justified by God. You are sanctified by your works." Is what he said. He literally said that.
I hope he's learning these truisms and not just kind of learning these quips on YouTube. You know what I mean? Which sometimes is good. I mean, sometimes it's good, but other times it can, lead you in places unknown on YouTube.
So I'll try to. See, I was about to try to
Callahan. Who's Callahan? We didn't even explain that.
Oh, it's just your grandson. Simple as that.
Yeah, 15-year-old kid who's basically thinking about things right now, which is awesome. He's getting there. He's thinking about things.
So another thing I was thinking about. Okay, one thing society does is society creates art, right? Music, paintings, sculptures, things like that.
We talked about that, I think, a little bit, but I don't know. Yeah.
So and there can be like really good art that, and storytelling. Storytelling's a part of it too. Most good art tells a story as well. And then in the Bible, we have lots of stories that are memorable. That's also a part of society, I guess. Right? Is the ability to pass down stories that teach each other what not to do and what to do, you know what I mean? Or how the world works or something like that,
Oh, that's go ahead.
So in this case, I'm almost trying to tear down my own argument, right? I had put forth the argument that society is evil. This is my counter argument to it. I'm not saying it's enough to completely convince me that society is not evil, because in some ways art can be very evil. You know what I mean? Art can manipulate you. Art can, art can direct you to do certain things. You know, the same thing with the stories. The stories can be evil too, right? Is you can have a story that's not entirely truthful, or it's manipulative in the way that I told you. The devil can be manipulative in a very, very subtle way. It seems like it's true, and so then it gets you to act a certain way, and then that way that you act could be evil. But anyways, it could also be good, and usually I'm convinced that art is a good thing. I have a lot of art that a lot of people would consider like very risque. Like I like the heavy metal magazines. I don't know if you ever heard of those from like the 70s.
Oh yeah, of course, of course.
I collect those, and they're very risque, but the artwork is so good. It's like captivating. It's very vibrant in some cases, and other times it's very interesting how the person marks it out, and like how they decide to draw certain things and aspects of whatever they're drawing.
Well, I got a point to this piece right there. This is something I'm gonna just show this real quick. This thing right here is something.
It's great. It's a great piece of art right
and
there.
I have no clue who the artist is, but it's something that my wife and I went to Kansas City recently, and I told her I really, really like this, and I have a hard time. It was a little. For me, it was pricey. I mean, I can't.
For a piece of art, right?
Yeah, I can't. I have a hard time pulling the trigger on something like that, even if I like it. And she just went out and just said, I'm getting it for you right now, because she liked it, I liked it, but I don't know why I'm showing it. But anyway, art for art's sake sometimes is great. It's fun.
Even darker arts too. I think God actually likes. There's a lot of stuff that we might consider dark, but I think God still likes, like Gothic architecture. That stuff is crazy, and I think God likes that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, I when I see it, like, and the fact that it sticks around and stuck around and it's so intriguing and everything like that, I have a hard time believing that God wouldn't like something that is of a dark aesthetic, as long as it's not being gratuitous, you know what I mean? Or it's intentionally being evil. You get what I'm saying?
I do. I mean, I don't know.
Because there are examples in art where, like, nudity is still great art, you know what I mean? And it's not evil in and of itself, because sometimes the human form is beautiful. And so you can do that, and that's not sinful. You get what I'm saying?
I do. And I mean, I have an art major. That was my major. So we did have to take those nude drawing classes, and to be frank with you, we had to take the nude drawing classes. If you think about trying to draw the body, if you can do that well, then you can draw most things very well, right? Honestly, So that's a that's like one of those tight ropes. Can you walk it? Not how do you walk it, but can you walk it? I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where a lot of Christians basically they would have to bow out or something like that.
Yeah.
And
well, it's really
you really
interesting.
you have to think through stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting too. So sorry there. Music. So we all know about like the Devil at the Crossroads, right? The story of the Devil at the Crossroads, right? It's incredible story.
It's supposed to be a documentary, but I don't know. I mean, it seems like a lot. There's a lot of truth in there, but then there's some ambiguity with where he went and how he finally came back and was as good as he was.
Well, no, actually, I watched another YouTube documentary separate from the one on Netflix. We see the one on Netflix. The one on Netflix is sensationalized a little bit. It's still a documentary, but it's still sensationalized. Okay. But I watched a few other ones where they have like the actual like documentation of like what happened to him and everything like that. And I actually
they said he went into the wilderness and met Satan.
Yes, no.
Okay,
that's the sensational part. That's the sensational part.
So did he sin? No.
The truth of the
matter,
he
listened to him. No.
The truth of the matter,
he sold his soul. No, he didn't sin.
The truth of the matter is he was just a guy who basically lived a really hard life
Mm-hmm.
because his wife died. His wife got like poisoned to death or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, the point is he lived a hard life. His kid and his wife died, and so he didn't have anything to do but play music, and so he would sit out in the graveyards, basically be playing music, and he played it so much that he got good. You know what I mean? Just play until you get good, right? And so the truth of the story ends up being practice.
Less.
Practice.
That's so funny when you get down to it, and sometimes it's a lot easier to swallow when it's less sensational, so it doesn't sell as well. But it could be very emotional too. You know what I mean? When he played in that environment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With all the hardships he had.
And he gets that feeling, he gets those feelings of, what he's going through. And that's why it's called the blues, right? It's the blues because you're the person that's playing the music is releasing their emotions, their blues.
I'm telling you, man, some blues music is awesome.
Yeah,
It really is. I mean,
well, it's funny though, because he actually played into that Devil at the Crossroads story a little, because some of his music, he's kind of playing into that. He's talking about hellhounds on his heels and stuff like that. So he used the sensationalism itself to get his stuff out there, which is kind of crazy to think about as well. You know what I mean? So.
How did we get down this trail?
Yeah. One's art being part of society. Art and these things, art can't come about unless you have society, because people have to invent the next good thing, and it takes the society to invent those things, because certain things have to be created. Take multiple people and everything to create, because it's really hard. As an individual alone in the wilderness by themselves, the chances of you making a guitar, saying you start off as a child and you have no knowledge that a guitar is even possible, you're obviously not going to make a guitar. You know what I mean? It's going to take generations and generations before people figure out music, and then people figure out what they can, how to finessively make a piece of wood that can vibrate sound, and
oh my God.
You have to come up with the strings and everything. Where do you get that from? So
we could even talk, and I've talked about this, and this is just again a sidebar about are people smarter now than they were centuries ago? I would argue that basically there were a lot of smart people back when as well. We talked about that, but
just figuring out those little tiny things that we take for granted that have been passed down for so long, just the knowledge of just how certain properties and elements work.
But I why do I bring that up? I was just correlating that to old art that's crazy good, and then correlating that to music and lyrics. I mean, there are some songs that basically that we wouldn't even know. Wayfaring Stranger, I think, is one of them that was written like hundreds of years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you listen to all these people that are trying to redo it right now. Some of them do it better than others, and it's like, that is an old song that really has some meat to it, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know why I'm traversing this. But what I will say, back to the societal thing, right, is it's one of those things. I guess I would have to say, it is just a thing, right? It is just a thing. So sometimes God, he just says he puts us in this place, and he has us work within society, right? He does. Like, if you think about there's this stupid thing that I don't know, stupid saying that I have, but basically it's a question, and it's why is a crime rate higher in big cities than it is in smaller towns?
Yeah, right.
Well,
there you go.
So it does have to do with society, but I say because they can. That's my answer. But that is rooted back to how people are, back to original sin and just their nature and who they are, right? Is what I would say. But I will say that, but in the midst of that, in the midst of that, if we're talking about people and how we're supposed to how we're supposed to be together, all right? There's several things in the Old Testament, several things in the New Testament. It talks about don't forsake the gathering of the saints, and then it talks about how we are to behave to each other as the church. Remember that there was this, there was this shirt that I saw a long time ago. I only saw it one time, but it was one of the truest shirts I've ever seen, where it says the church has left the building, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
because
yeah.
because
it's the people.
it is the people are
it's
the
not
church.
The building, it's the people.
Yeah, it'd be more accurate to say, hey, that building, not that building is a church, but that is a building where the church meets. It would be more accurate to say that. We understand what we're talking about when we say that's a church, but the church really in the New Testament is the people, right?
Yep.
And God talks about do not forsake the gathering of saints. He talks about laying on hands. He talks about anointing, someone who's sick with oil. It talks about all of these interactions these things that you can't do without being in a group setting. Yeah. So even if I guess what I would say is, even if society is inherently evil, I guess I can give you that. It could be, but even if society is inherently evil, God still wants us to behave as a church together and a church within society to impact society,
Yeah, I got one last thing, and I guess we can finish off on this, because I mean that was pretty good. One last thing is, it does seem pretty clear, I think, that God likes family, right?
Oh, it's abundantly clear.
Yeah. I mean, he's called a father. Jesus is his son.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
He talks about the bride. He talks about the bride and the bridegroom. Jesus talks about that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean,
the wedding. It was Jesus's first miracle.
Yeah, I mean, even one of the things, I think someone comes to Jesus, right, and says, hey, like, can I follow you, or something like that? And he says, no, go back to your family, go take care of your family, or something like that, right? So
there's a couple of them. There's some that basically where Jesus is kind of saying, basically these guys are dualistic, where they don't want to follow him. But there are other instances where he has said, and I think one of them was a guy that he was a guy that he cast out demons, and then the guy wanted to follow him, and he told him, no, go back to your own town,
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It's not like you're not following Jesus, but it was a physical following that he basically told him to go back to his own town.
Yeah.
But what's that about?
I mean, yeah, well, that's the point, is and in that case, Jesus was more concerned that this person go take care of his family, or go be with his family, or his town, or whatever. What the point is he's supposed to be with the people he's supposed to be with, as opposed, and that goes all the way back to the very beginning. We were talking about the two men, the two from the two fathers of the family, one that goes out and decides to go to another country to preach, while one stays at home and takes care of his family.
Part of it too, though, and okay, so
we've come full circle all the way back to the very beginning. So it's perfect.
One thing I will say about the Bible is that there are, when it comes to what are we supposed to do in Scripture, there's I'm trying to think of the name, for some reason it escapes me, but it is I totally lost my train of thought. Well, it has to do with some stories that basically we're supposed to do versus these others that basically are just stories. And sometimes churches say this is what we're supposed to do. It's like, no, that's not what we're supposed to do. This was just a story about David slewing Goliath or whatever. You know what I mean? Or
it's not telling you to go out and kill a giant, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but it just has to do with is it something that we are supposed to do, or is it a story that brings up a truism, or maybe it just shows how God worked and interacted with this situation, or whatever the case may be. And some people just want to just follow it. It's like, wait a sec, that's, this is not what you're supposed to do. It's abundantly clear to me, at least on some of them, you know what I mean, that, that this is not something we were supposed to be out there doing just because someone else did it in the Bible, you know.
That was a little tangent at the end there, but So basically, the conclusion is society is not evil in and of itself. That's our conclusion for the end here, huh?
Well, it could be. I mean, you could argue otherwise if you want to put something down in the comment related to that or anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Go for it. This is going to be a journey.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if I truly believed that first, actually, when I did come in, but it was the direction I wanted to go. So
what verse?
Or not verse as in Bible verse, but that society is the devil.
Okay.
I'm not saying that was when I first came in exactly what I believed, but then as we were going, I was definitely playing the part of the philosopher, definitely the part of one side, versus to see how far you could push your side. So I hope that makes sense. That's what I'm trying to do on my side of this with the podcast. You know what I mean? Is I want to put forth a hard question, that we got to push to come to a conclusion on.
So it is back to their original premise for this: is we want people to think and reason through things, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Is what we want them to do, right?
Yeah.
And the Bible again talks about the reason for the hope that is within you. In other words, you need to speak it that way, and you need to know it well enough to know the reason for the hope that is within you. So
good stuff. I think we were successful. I think we should call it there. So
all right, we'll call it a wrap.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks everybody. Yeah, like you said, comment. If you guys, have anything to add to it, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and if you want to tell us your favorite blues song, absolutely,
you
can do that as well.
That as well. Yeah, and like and follow, and then upload schedule. I mean, I haven't quite got it down yet, but it looks. I get these up on Spotify first, though. Spotify first, YouTube a few days later or something like that. So if you guys are looking for it, if you guys want it first, go to Spotify, but then we'll also be on YouTube. So all right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, and we're also on Apple Podcast now.
All right.
So I already got it out to Apple Podcast as well. So that goes out a little bit after the Spotify one. So all right, thanks very much, guys. Not bad.